Electric Cafe.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. In this video, I'll be reviewing the 2011 album by M83 called Hurry Up, We're Dreaming. This was recommended by a viewer, so I appreciate that. And I'm always looking to expand my horizons, and also I feel like when I review something that I don't know, or somebody turns me on to something, I I generally I feel like I get better as a reviewer, not in any sense of the way that you get something more out of it, but I feel like I get a little bit more understanding of where my boundaries are, and also where my comfortability is, and also expand that, and not always just rate stuff that I like or rate stuff that I know, or even bands that I know, but just albums that I don't know of them. So if I can expand that and go into a band that I haven't listened to an album, and I don't know that well, I appreciate that, because I need those recommendations. Sometimes I have like preconceived notions of bands, or maybe ideas of what they are. And when I thought of M83, obviously they had a huge hit with this album and the song called Midnight City. And because of the cover artwork and maybe the song and just the sort of the production on the track, I always thought they were more of a vaporwave track. I wouldn't even say vaporwave album, but more on the electronica vaporwave. But I was happy to hear that, and happy to be shown this album, that it does go into at least a little bit of indie rock, or maybe a little bit of dream pop, or maybe even some shoegaze elements with the guitar effects. A lot of times when tracks get very popular by bands like M83 or Empire of the Sun, I don't really want to check into more, because I'll hear a song and they'll play a song and they'll play it to death, and I won't really want to be interested into checking out more from the band. And that's probably narrow-minded on my part, but a lot of times I figure if it's so poppy that I won't really be finding much else. I'm at a stage in my life where I like poppy music, I like catchy music, but I'm looking for something deeper. And but at the same time, I do like some things in vaporwave and synthwave, and of course dream pop and shoegaze. So I'll always be into these genres, but I I wasn't, when things are really poppy, and I expected M83 to be poppy, I was hesitant to ever check them out. Let's put it that way. And so I appreciate the user who recommended me to check this out. I did like it better than I thought I would. There was nothing on the album that I disliked. There was nothing under the album that I thought was lower than okay. There was nothing on the album that I thought was bad. There's nothing on the album I would turn off, that I couldn't get through, that it was exhausting to get through, even though it's a pretty long album. So, having said that, with my strict opinion on stuff that I don't know, I feel like is a little bit out of my wheelhouse, I do feel like that's a good thing. So that's a really good thing, because I can be pretty opinionated. I don't get a lot of requests for albums, and when they're more on the poppy side of electronic music, I get a little weary of it. I might hating it, and so there's sometimes where people will review stuff, and I've told them that I don't think I should review that, because I might be too negative on it, because I have a feeling I'm really going to dislike it. And M83, I was kind of hinting I probably wouldn't like it, but I was happy to say I thought most of it was good. And so in that respect, I think it's a win for me, me personally, that I like them a little bit more now than I had my preconceived notion of them before this. I do like the lead singer's voice. I do like how it sits in the pocket, and I do like the echo on it. I like the layering on the voice. I do like when they branch out more into the indie songs, and I felt that like on the tracks Reunion, New Map, and also Claudia Lewis. I think Claudia Lewis is the one that had the bass line, the more funky bass line. And so on those tracks, I felt like those kind of went into a little bit of indie, or maybe even dream pop. But if somebody uses the expression dream pop, this is probably as dream pop as it is vaporwave. It's like if there was like a line of, I guess, electronic music, or like, this is like right on the edge of indie and electronic music. And I want to say they're more like a band, because it's harder to be an electronic band and go into a rock where it's a little. I feel like it's a little bit easier to be a rock band and use electronic instruments, or at least a rhythm machine or some effects. And so it feels like an indie rock band doing a little bit of vaporwave, a little bit of dream pop, maybe a little bit of electronica in there. And the shorter tracks on the album, like again, there's 22 tracks on here, so it's a fairly long album. The short tracks that are 2.5 minutes or less, they have a place on the album. I feel like they didn't distract, or I wasn't thinking like, why are they there? Like, I think they're charming in a way, but the ones that I have kind of, and I do feel like they sort of lend something to the theme of the album, or at least the pacing, or maybe a what I call like a palate cleanser. Like when you have a song and then you have some kind of like short interlude, it kind of gives an album a chance to reset and then maybe take you somewhere else. And I felt like it did a little bit of that in the beginning. Every once in a while, every 4 or 5 tracks, there'd be like a 2 minute interlude. But then as it got towards the middle, the second half of the album, I feel like there's maybe too many of those. Maybe some of the bigger ones, like I have to look at my notes. You have to bear with me, but the tracks called "Echoes of Mine," "Year One," "One UFO." Also, really, the bigger ones were "Splendor," "Soon My Friend," and my tears are becoming a sea. Like those three tracks, I felt like they're kind of big and they're crescendo, but I feel like they're a little bit maybe overdone or overblown or too many of them, or just feeling like he doesn't, the lead singer or whoever's in the band, like I almost feel like they don't have the experience to really write some of these tracks, and you have to take this with a grain of salt because uh, I'm not trying to be elitist in saying this. The song that really kind of caught my ear in this thought was track 11, "Soon My Friend." Like it's a big kind of classical numbers with big Tiffany's and drums, and it almost sounds like a classical number in an electronic vein. And I felt like it was kind of amateurish to kind of do that because I feel like they don't have the experience or the focus to write that song, and so it felt like it was big and dramatic, and I liked that and nostalgic at the same way, but it didn't grab me in any way, and it wasn't even the production. Kind of getting back to track number 11, "Soon My Friend," it feels very big and it feels very dramatic, and but it at the same time there's like a lot of tracks that do that, so I wouldn't say I was quite numb in it, but it was almost like if something's that dramatic within only 2 minutes and it comes after another dramatic one that was around 2 minutes, it kind of like I don't know, it kind of it hurts the impact of those ones because there's so many of them, and there's a good 7 or 8, maybe even close to 9 tracks that are a minute to 3 minutes that are very again dramatic or like these crescendos that are big and they're kind of dreamlike, nostalgic, and I appreciate that. I do like that angle, and I think that's what they're trying to do with some of the interludes in between the songs. So it gives it like a storybook kind of storytelling sound, and I like interludes. I'm big fans of intros and outros and trying to create a story within uh, pieces of songs, of main songs. So you have these main songs, then you piece together things that kind of create a flow to it, and I like that. And it's hard to do within 22 songs. So it's not like this album got too long at times, but there was just individual songs there that I just didn't quite feel were different than some of the other parts, and some of the other songs kind of had the same thing. So it kind of became a little bit redundant at times. Production of the album, it's not ideal for me, but it's not to the point where it's annoying or it's verging on loud, but it's not overly loud. But it's bearing on that point where I can't get any depth in the album in some of the tracks. It's hard to get into the layers of the depth because everything is such a block of sound. And I know that's purposely, but track number 3, "Reunion," which I actually, what is one of my favorite tracks. And I like the dance beat in it. It's nice and driving. It's got a little bit more of a shimmering atmosphere to come in. It kind of drifts out in and out of electronic and dream pop, which is cool. But at 3 minutes and 30 seconds, the additional melody that they add should have took it to another level, and it didn't quite do it because it's very muddy in that range, and that's because there's too much going on in that block. So that kind of part that should have been embellished and should have took the track to another level was just kind of muddy in there, and you can hear it from 3:30 to about 4, maybe 4:05 or something like that. And then it kind of recovered and faded out. And I really like the melody that Reunion, the track number 3, ends in. It's kind of poignant. It's kind of it's endearing. It's kind of it's a nice little 30-second like melodic ending that's kind of almost taken out from the original idea of the track, if that makes sense. But that crescendo on that track should have really took the track to another level for me, and it didn't. Even though I think that track is one of my top 3 or 4 favorites on the album, it should have took it to another level, but it couldn't because it's really muddy in that block of those frequencies. That was an example of where something that should have improved the track. You couldn't really do that because it was just too much going on in there. As far as my favorite track, one of them was track number 5 called "Wait." It's a little bit more acoustic. I like the strings addition, the melody pings. It's a little bit more somber in here. I did give that score for Weight 7.5 stars. I thought it was very good and close to excellent for what it does. Some of the vocal parts in here, the spoken word, I think there's one with a kid, one with a girl. I think there's 3 tracks in total that do that. It's a little bit childish. I wouldn't say it's verging on disliking it, but I felt like it was kind of trying to tell a story, but at the same time, it wasn't bothersome or bothering me, but it just kind of felt like it was, I don't know, I wouldn't say even sticky or, like cheesy. It was just, I don't know, it didn't really do anything for me. I think their niche, or at least their sound, is when it is like Midnight City or maybe like track number 14, OK Pal. Like this feels a little bit more like their sound with a beat, and it's kind of like a post punk and a good pace. Track 13, New Maps, I think is one of my top, probably tied with my top track, also with a 7.5 rating. It's kind of post punk beat, blending some dance and indie in this track. It's upbeat, solid vocal in there, good pace. It's kind of a textbook sound for like a post punk dancey side. I thought New Map is kind of their range as far as like the more popular songs, or at least more pop dance oriented songs. That direction, I felt it was good on New Map. That was one of the standout tracks. I felt like I actually thought the track number 1, the intro, is one of the most developed tracks as far as that progression. And I really like the melody as well, but it just doesn't feel like it kind of gets to the next level for me. But it kind of had me anticipating the title, the main track of the album, Midnight City. So I did like that it gave the expectation and something it delivered with Midnight City. So I do like the intro, but as it by itself, I feel like there was opportunity. It could have got even better because I do like the melody in that one, and I feel like that one's one of the tracks that's most drawn out that works. A lot of the other tracks are kind of, there are some ones that are drawn out, but it's kind of like one notish. Like some of the shorter tracks are kind of like one note. I don't want to be one of those people that recommends music that I think is better than this in the same vein. Everybody has their own opinion, and I don't want to compare apples to apples to somebody. Or if anybody likes this album a lot and compares something else, I'm sure if you go through my channel or you'll see future videos, there'll be some bands in this kind of range for me, and that I would think is better, but I don't want to necessarily point them out unless somebody really asks for my opinion and say, hey, what do you think is better than this? Then I'll do that. But I don't want to get into that kind of recommendations because then somebody else thinks it isn't, and then they'll think my opinion isn't worth listening to. So I don't want to get into that. Thinking my music is better than your music. I don't like to get into that. But the elements are there for the sound that I like. But just the focus or the goal is different on this. And it's hard to compare. And I guess like when I think of ambient music, this just for an example, ambient music has a goal of putting you to sleep or relaxing you or making you very reflective or putting you in a somber mood or making you think or it lets you do other things during your day and it's background music so it's atmospheric it's just background music it's almost like the perfect kind of I can give it like the perfect landscape or the perfect environment to play something that's ambient, right? If it's something cold and wintry sounding, and you had colors and you had white, and it was kind of a winter picture, then that music would go great with that, right? Just like Christmas music would go good with Christmas time, right? Like I feel like I don't understand the direction of this album, maybe because it's trying to be pop, and I don't really associate a direction of the style very poppy and at the same time it's 80s sounding so I get that side of it because there's a lot of nostalgic music vaporwave again synthwave a lot of different styles even post-punk and even indie rock it has a certain sound to it that makes you think of a certain time in the past and so the 80s feel on here is natural and that's I almost expected so I kind of knew that and then when you think of the artwork of the album it has like pink in it so you think of like vaporwave and the colors is very graphic digitally looking and then the sheen of the songs and the production is for me it's not atmospheric to where it's for me it's like dream pop or shoegaze it's more towards electronic and it's more towards vaporwave because of that, or maybe synthwave because of that. And so for me, it almost doesn't grab me because I don't, I really, it's harder for me to relate to what I feel like this is trying to be poppy or even the tracks that are kind of like with the spoken word and kind of trying to be dreamlike and nostalgic or make you think like they feel a little bit like AM sounding versions of deeper stuff that I would normally listen to. So I feel like the elements are there, but I feel like the goal or the tools aren't the same or more towards what I like. I guess it's hard to explain, but the production is there would be differences of production of what I like versus this. This is verging on a little too loud, and there are some bands that I can think of that are in this vein that are maybe more rocky or maybe more electronic, but they are also very loud, and I do point that out a lot because in this style I get that a lot. Is 1997 to about 2005 is like the sweet spot of music that's too loud. And I won't say sweet spot is a good thing, but a lot of music too loud. And most genres, I think, corrected itself by like 2005, 2006 as far as the production. And I'm talking about people making music on computers. And and I kind of compare it to maybe you go back to like 1985 and keyboards are coming out that are sort of emulating better sounding instruments from the 70s and so they think oh well this DX7 Yamaha horn has this oh it's a horn and it's newer so we won't use the old one even though the old one was more layered more a better sound more analog more richer and maybe it's endearing because it's so archaic and almost filtered like almost analog sounding versus a very very clean very basic 8-bit almost sound like so you kind of take that same example of the keyboard differences in the mid 80s and that change and you take that to people recording on tape machines and things like that or in studios and you're taking that to the mid to late 90s and you're using an Apple computer and a laptop and you're using programs instead of machines that make those sounds there was also a time of that adjustment and putting and recording and understanding that maybe that wasn't the best way, even though technology kind of geared us towards that way, or the changes and it becoming more easier and sitting by a laptop and becoming a lot cheaper than buying a lot of equipment. Maybe that wasn't the best way to go. I have a friend. His name is John Beltram, and he's been writing music since the early '90s all the way through now his albums from like 1997 to 2006, he dislikes very much because he understands as a producer when he was using the instruments at the time and sort of starting to use programs and creating things on laptops versus this, and mastering changes at the time were a little bit different, and people were making their songs louder, the loudness wars of those years. So he even understands that that particular period, he's not happy with the production and how it sounds like. And that happened a lot in like 1997 to 2004, 2005 in electronic music, and especially pop electronic music. And it got extended a little bit, and in some ways, in an endearing way, in a nostalgic way, with vaporwave and synthwave, and they sort of it became. And there's even trends of course, like lo-fi and 8-bit and chip tunes and stuff like that, and it kind of becoming a nostalgic thing to be low grade or lo-fi, and it not being perfect. It was almost like in a video game way. If you really get into vaporwave, you know what I'm talking about. That whole aesthetic of that sound is nostalgic, like this is, but it's verging on way too loud. And this thankfully isn't to that extreme to where it's very loud, but it's kind of in that vein of a vein that I don't really enjoy that much, and I think was a little bit of a again, maybe not the right idea to go forward to go forward to go for in sound, as far as being lo-fi, being very sheeny, and it not having layers and depth that I think a style like dream pop and shoegaze should have. So I don't know if I'm getting my point across. Hopefully, it's maybe a little bit easier to do with playing examples. Maybe I should do that in a video or something like that. But one of the tracks I wanted to point out that I really did like was track 21, called "Claws I Love You." This is one of the only tracks I felt was like next level or pushing the boundary as far as like electronic side. Like I really like the sequence, and the vocal works all at the same time. And even without the beat, I thought this was a really clever little track. And I was verging on giving it one of the highest scores on the album, and then unfortunately the beat starts and then it fades out, and it's only like a minute and 44 seconds, so it's a very short track. But I would have liked to hear it kind of expand and go on, and because I felt like this had the best kind of sequence melody, and I felt like it was the one that kind of hit me the best, and I that was one of my three favorite tracks, and it's "Claws I Love You," and then also "New Map," and then also "Wait." Those are my three favorite tracks of the album. Again, I didn't think any song was under a 4, and 4 for me is okay. So none of the songs were bad. None of the songs were underperforming or felt like I wanted to not listen to them or turn them off. Like it wasn't even close to being that bad. Everything was, and nothing was even under par from the rest of the album. I felt like maybe just some choices I felt like could have been better, or maybe even less songs, or less songs that do the same, kind of take some off and maybe make it a little bit shorter so other songs stand out a little bit more. Maybe that could help the album. But when I add up all the songs, for my overall album score, I give the album score a 54 out of 100. I think it's right in between pretty good and good. I think it was close to good. I think if you take off some of the tracks that were similar, I think it's a good album. I think it's right at 60, maybe even a little bit higher. So I think it is a good album in some respects, but as far as my score, I think it's a little bit lower at 54. But I think it's a pretty good album. But I do like it better than I thought I was, and I want to thank the viewer for recommending it and giving me a challenge to listen to something outside I would normally choose. And so I have a different respect for M83, and maybe I'll check out another album of theirs in the future. But yeah, I want to say thanks for your time. If there's an album that you want to recommend, just send me an email down below. You'll see my email and also how I score songs and albums. And thanks for your time, and we'll see you on the next video.